The next presentation will be given by Mr. Michael Burcham, and he will talk about the Nashville story and how they have successfully established an entrepreneurial community in that area.
So good afternoon. I'm Michael Burcham. I am from Nashville, Tennessee. A bit of a confession to make for those of you in academic circles. In addition to being a faculty member at Vanderbilt, I am an entrepreneur. I've been in the healthcare business for over 30 years. I've launched 3 companies that I've created and sold. And after the last one, I committed myself back to help my community build its entrepreneurial spirit. I want to thank you all for having me here, to King Fahd University, to Whale. Thank you for all your kindness to me. I had the privilege to host Dr. Musa when he visited Nashville, and it's a real delight to be here with you. So thank you all very much for the opportunity to visit. There are 2 parts to what I will share with you. This afternoon, I'm going to share with you what we did from the university to build our ecosystem. Because when we started our journey, we had parts of a system, but I would say we didn't have a system. And we knew that within the university, without a good community within which to have our businesses launch, they would simply sputter and fail. Tomorrow morning, for those of you who are bright and early enough to join me, I will share with you then at part 2 what we have done inside the university. So my work has been both in the community and in the university to make a difference. You'll also see, as I share with you our story, 4 distinct parts of our work. First, we are very centered on partnerships with large businesses. We believe it is the centerpiece of what makes our model work, and you'll see that reflected not only throughout my presentation this afternoon, but in the morning. Secondly, we believe that every young startup leader, founder, has to learn how to become a CEO, because if they do not, 75% or more will fail. It's not that they didn't have a good idea, they've never been trained to run a company. So we partner with corporate CEOs to teach young founders how to be a CEO. The third attribute is a mentoring model, because we think that more important than the facility is the personal relationship between a mentor and someone who is starting a business that creates success. And then the fourth dimension is having a community within which startups and grow-ups and thriving young companies can prosper because the community embraces having entrepreneurship in their community. So with that, let's get started, and I'll share with you a little bit of our story. I had the great pleasure of spending almost 2 days on the plane, but I thought I'd give you a sense of where Vanderbilt is located from here. We're in the sunny southern part of the state, so the temperature is relatively commensurate right now between your climate and mine. We wanted to develop an ecosystem in Nashville, and what our definition of an ecosystem, it refers to all the elements. That is the individuals, the organizations, and the institutions who are outside of the individual entrepreneur that are conducive to creating an environment in which a young company can thrive. Because we believe firmly that without that environment, no one can really thrive in their space. So as Vanderbilt, we wanted to create a community outreach center, which we call the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. It is a standalone nonprofit organization, and it was done to create a link between us and our community, because we realized if our brand alone were on something, it would be limited to our people. And unfortunately, we don't make up the whole city nor the whole state. So we had to create a brand that transcended us and made us part of the community. We spent 2007, 8, and most of 9 in very intentional conversations with most of our community. And what we learned from very successful individuals who had started and scaled very large companies, when we asked them to reflect on the last 10 or 20 years of their journey, as I did on my own, where were the missing elements in the business? What we realized is we needed a focused organization that provided screening of ideas, that provided really strong mentoring around business models, and introduced the startup to its very first customers. So as Vanderbilt and the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, we started a third entity in 2010 as well called Startup Tennessee. And that was to expand beyond our city into an entire regional area, the ecosystem, because we were getting startups and young entrepreneurs coming from all over the Southeast, and we knew we needed a greater outreach than what we had. Our focus area is in these early stages of starting and early. Once we get a company funded, we then provide coaching to the founder to become a CEO. In the steps of building this, we created and learned some valuable lessons. The first is that we had to align our vision for success and the metrics around which we would measure ourselves. We had to make sure those definitions of success were going to match up with everyone involved. And so for that 3-year period, we were engaged in very intentional conversations of where to apply the resources. What we learned most is that many people have an idea, but ideas need air to breathe and become good businesses. And if that idea stays within my head or in a small group of us, it never becomes vibrant. For a good idea to become a great business, it has to have airspace. And to do that, we want to create a screening process that our investment community and the business community would give the startup real valuable feedback of what their business had today or what their idea had today and what it would need to become a business. Through this process of iteration, 4, 5, 6, sometimes 10 rounds with investors and business leaders before they ever start, the startup entrepreneur or founder learns so many things that avoids enormous wasted time, enormous wasted capital, and you can get a business model that's much closer to something good. Now the reality is, even when the company starts, if true north were the perfect success, most business will start about 15 degrees off north. And every day, the leader of that company has to slowly move the business toward north. They do that by first understanding that all their assumptions aren't true, and as they find the truth, adjust the plan, adjust the model so that the margin stays in place, customers show up, and the business prospers. A founder who fails to do that will fail. That's why you've heard today from time to time, well, we're not so much on a business plan. I actually like the planning process, but what I don't like is sticking to it even though you know it's not working, because that is certainly a recipe for failure. The second element of lessons learned in what we did was to engage our partner businesses in this city. We have engaged in intentional work with most of our large corporations because they become the first customer of our startup community. If I have a large business who isn't willing to invest time and energy to work with a startup, we really don't focus on that space. Now, to tell you a little bit about our city, I'm very fortunate in that we have more healthcare companies based in our city than any place in the United States. Almost 600 companies are there. 15% of all the healthcare spending in our country flows through our banks. Because of that, the concentration that we have provides us enormous opportunity, not just in medical services, but in technology-enabled services, medical technologies, and now consumer-based healthcare as our entire infrastructure is being shifted to a direct-to-consumer model. Our city was founded around publishing and entertainment. If you've heard anything of Nashville, you've heard of our music. Because of that, we invested very heavily in digital media, which is the fusion of the published word, the spoken and sound, and video to do education technologies, training technologies, and new technologies that enlighten and share with others through the fusion of those things that are very revolutionary and new to the digital web and to mobile media as well. We focus on lean technologies as part of that as well. Our partners in business see what we do as a new form of R&D, where they can place a number of small bets for their company on things they want to try and do, knowing that some will work and some will not, but the ones that do, they already have a vested interest. In most cases, the corporate partner has a significant ownership stake, sometimes a majority ownership stake in the new venture, and the startup founder also has an equity interest in the venture. Now, that's a little avant-garde for the typical startup, but it's very powerful because it means that in an economy that's a bit more conservative, and I'm in a southern economy that's very conservative, it allows someone to try a new business with a nurturing corporate partner trying to help rather than trying to destroy their business. We seem to have more success when we use that model. We connect to the capital and the funding pipeline. This has been one of my most significant jobs. Within our program, we now have 3 seed funds. I have the term sheets in my office. We do fixed base equity valuations of companies, and if a young startup needs capital, I can provide it within an hour. Beyond that seed funding, then we have 2 angel networks that are part of what we do that provide the next stage of funding. That's classically $500,000 to $1 million US dollars. Then we have the early venture that picks up at that. All of those entities have connected into the center. They are stakeholders in the center in what we do, and they help us not only screen new businesses, but coach businesses. We also go to the investment community to find out what types of new businesses they want. 2 of our most significant partners are New York-based equity firms, private equity, who are looking for new ideas to put in their portfolio. They share with me their problem. I go through our engineering school, our business school. We build, along with local entrepreneurs, that product, and within a year or so, it's purchased by the private equity. The investors make money. The early startup entrepreneur makes money. Everyone has learned from the process, and the next business that young entrepreneur starts will be even better than the first. We leverage the resource to secure our big opportunities. We have focused in 4 basic areas because it's our strength. We are focused in healthcare, we are focused in technologies, and we infuse technology into a number of services like logistics and so on, because technology-enabled services are our highest valuation companies in the U.S. By doing so, I know I can attract the attention of large venture funds and large private equity funds by having a technology-enabled service that has higher cash flow margins than a simple service business. We also do digital media, as I mentioned before, and our 4th area to build our community is around social enterprises, basically building the infrastructure of our community so as our community grows, access to food, access to housing, all the things our community needs to prosper, also has young companies forming in that space to do good. I think the most important thing we did is to organize the front door of our community, because we had lots of parts, but if you were a newcomer to our city, just as I imagine a newcomer here might feel like, you're not sure where the right people are to talk to. And so a newcomer to our city would drive around, have a conversation, be directed somewhere else, and it might take you 6 months to a year to figure out where are all the resources. So while I don't try to duplicate all the resources in the city, it is my job to make sure they're cataloged correctly. I know who they are, I have their phone number, I have their email, and when someone walks in that needs help, I don't just give them a list of names. I personally call, I set up their appointments with them, and we get them their meetings. Or better yet, the business comes to meet them at our space. It has been a valuable tool to bring new people to our community and to get our businesses very tied to our startup community and what we're doing. As a result of that, every single month, we screen over 100 new concepts that come from all over the southeastern United States. We have launched 80 new companies in the last 36 months. They employ over 1,000 people. They provide nearly $100 million in economic impact just in their revenues alone to our community, and that is in a 3-year time period. But it's because of the structure and the method that we went about that we've had this degree of success. When we screen a startup, I went to the investment community and said, what is it you want to invest in so that we screen correctly and we coach correctly? These are the 5 areas every investor in my part of the world wants to see. First is, what is the business model? Does it have a cash flow margin that's better than the industry average? Next is, who is this management team? Have they ever done this before? And if not, do they have advisors who are helping them do this? It's okay if you've not done it before, but you must have seasoned business executives and advisors working with you. The third is, what is your market? How do you know? And what evidence do you have the problem you're trying to solve really exists, that the market wants your product or service? The fourth is, what level of capital will you need? When will this break even? At what product valuation do we bring in new capital so an investor can get a return on their investment? And finally, do you have market traction or momentum? We call this the 5 M's. A young company can get 20 points in each category, And based on their score, I know exactly what to do with that young company to get them ready, not only for my business community, for a partnership, but get them ready for the investment community. And each time when I rescreen them, I give them the opportunity to have learned and improve on what they're doing. So our core operations are very straightforward. We have a selection of our work that is around our resources. We have a very strong selection of our work around mentoring, around community building, because we want these companies to prosper as they leave our safe space and go out into our community, in advocacy, and in capital. And each day, my operating team is working on developing each of these 5 areas very, very well. We were founded officially in 2010 after the 3 years of study. We, from our private sector, raised over $5 million to renovate a building. That came from the investment community and the business community, mainly because they wanted to see others succeed. Why would they want to see others succeed? Because our large businesses knew that their being innovative inside would be a rare thing. They wanted to have access to new ideas, new ways of thinking, new technologies, so their businesses could soak up those things, perhaps buy those young companies, and continue to be prosperous companies without having to worry that some competitor, perhaps on the west coast of the U.S., was going to do something that would hurt them later. So it's an investment in their future to be part of what we do. These are some images from inside our center to give you a sense of the kind of space we have. This particular space is where we have mentor meetings. We have 12 different offices where mentors all day long are meeting with startups. I have 300 business leaders from our city of 1 million people who are mentoring. They give us 1/2 day a month. We schedule that out for them so when they arrive, they know exactly the kind of company they're going to see and what they're going to do. They mentor and coach within their industry. So healthcare companies are coaching healthcare startups. Bridgestone is coaching logistic and transportation startups. Caterpillar is coaching in the financial startups. Nissan is coaching in automotive startups. Because of this work, it's provided these opportunities for young people who are our students to be fused with entrepreneurs in our community. I have yet to find a student-only program that can show you phenomenal success. Why? Because students aren't quite sure how to build a business. They have the passion and they have the desire. They simply don't have the know-how. By putting them with seasoned executives and business leaders, we are able to teach by immersion, to put the student into a learning laboratory so that they can experience what does it mean to start a company so that they too can prosper and lead. And within a few short years after working with this young company, it may be acquired by a larger one. They may have 2 or 3 years of experience there and then move on to start their own. Some of them want to start it right out of college. It's up to the student based on their level of knowledge and growth and the time that they put in. I firmly believe in a concept called the 10,000 hour rule, and that is to be good at anything, you must invest at least 10,000 hours of your time or you won't be any good at it. And I say that to every student I meet. If you really want to be an entrepreneur, get started because you're going to invest at least 10,000 hours before you're really worth anything at it. Their eyes get really big, then suddenly it clicks in, he's right, I really have to invest myself to do this. So we've created 7 major components of our ecosystem that I wanted to share with you. First is it has to have an entrepreneurial leader. I've chosen to stay and lead this as an executive myself because I serve as a role model. I have another dozen men such as myself who successfully exited their own companies who are doing the same thing because we believe this is enormous opportunity for us. We also get to invest in the businesses. I'm an investor in over 30 of the businesses we've launched. I don't set the terms, but once an outside investor sets the term sheet, I follow on with an investment as well. It's my way of showing I absolutely believe in the product I'm producing, otherwise I wouldn't invest. Second is we've created this front door that has been magical and transformative for our community. The third is we have started to attract our startups throughout the region because they see the business mentoring and the partnering with large businesses as a unique characteristics their local incubator simply doesn't have. The mentoring and the coaching for the startups is built around building a business model, building your market, and building your team. We have connected the entire capital continuum from the seed and the angel all the way through the early venture and private equity. We've had our first dozen exits, so our young investors already had a payday on their first investment, are now investing in a second round. There's nothing that will excite your campus and your community and your businesses more than to see their investment in something actually pay off. We firmly believe in our business partnerships. We start in categories where large businesses are willing to invest time and energy with myself. If a large business category isn't interested in working, I don't try to do that space. I simply refer that entrepreneur to a place I know does that well, because again, I want the entrepreneur I'm working with to understand that I don't try to do things I'm not capable of doing, nor should you. So I try to lead by example in that space and to have a vibrant accelerator. There are some key entrepreneurial tools we teach. I've just given you a short list here of the toolbox. For those of you joining me Tuesday afternoon in the mentoring session, we'll go through these in some detail on Tuesday afternoon. So our ecosystem, to put this in some reflective summary, looks a little bit like this. Our outreach, incubator and accelerators, support functions, the networking organizations, funding, and our business partners. The Entrepreneur Center, in a partnership with Vanderbilt, has done this work to create both a community presence as well as our inside the university presence. As we do that, we've created a number of organizations that we do outreach around. We already had incubators and accelerators in the city. 3 of them now run out of our space. Another few run their own, which is perfectly fine with us. We have a number of support functions that are helping to reduce the regulatory issues, banking issues, legal issues, so that a startup can learn how to start the business without having to overcome those barriers on their own. A number of networking organizations, our business council, our healthcare council, our technology council provides introductions of these young companies to the businesses they will serve. A large funding pipeline of opportunity from seed to private equity, and then the various corporate partners who invest their time and become our first customers of our product. So we have 4 key lessons we have learned. First is it's all about execution, not about the idea. We teach young men to execute on their idea by teaming them with seasoned executives who know how to execute. The second, businesses must be engaged. Without proper business engagement of larger companies, small companies will sputter around and likely go nowhere very fast. Third, it takes capital, particularly in the seed and angel round, to get a prototype built so you can get the product off the ground. And fourth, your ecosystem matters a lot. You can do things inside your bubble, and things collapse when they get outside the bubble. So you have to think about your community infrastructure and the way that community infrastructure will align and support with the work you're doing. And there are 7 core functions for the incubator to thrive: how to screen the idea, how to identify the high growth opportunities, lead this thing by seasoned, successful entrepreneurs, have business modeling and startup tools, access to seed capital, mentoring, and community engagement. How has this worked out for us? This year, we've been ranked #1 in job growth in the entire U.S. for 2012. That didn't happen overnight. It's been almost a 9-year journey to get us there. But our city is exploding in its growth because of the large number of not only new startups wanting to come there to launch their businesses, but the large number of companies we've now put on the ground. CNN Money has ranked us as the city where new businesses are thriving. 5 years earlier, we didn't even make the rankings. So it's an enormous climb for us. And the Wall Street Journal in 2011 named us one of the absolute best places in the U.S. to start a healthcare company, largely because of the density of healthcare there. So we focused on our strengths so that we can do well for our community, do well for our institution, do well for our students. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.